microphone while we're doing this? Okay, well when it comes to spinning, guys, whoever's near the cables, be real careful with it, please. Alright, so go with the 23.5 clockwise adjustment. Matt, can you stand just where you are now and hold that position, please, darling? So the 12 point will be over there.
Okay. Where's Lizzie?
Let's just get the 12 and 6 set up first. Well, let's use the method that we used when we went to Chichen Itza. All right? So we'll get the 12 set and the 6 set. And then 9 and 3 come in, just like you did when we went to the site. Don't.
Actually, Lizzie, a little bit more than that to go. That's it.
Literally.
If the team members can just wait, it all worked really nicely the other day. Just wait until we get the team leaders in position.
That gold pin. That the atomic.
All right, you all right?
Is going to shift back around. I didn't get describe any of that, but if people
Okay,
will
one
wake
step
up.
to the left, Georgie. Lizzie, take a step to the left. The ship just moved a bit.
All right?
Okay.
Right, go for that. Right, 9 and 3.
Who's 3? I'm 9. Okay.
We have to be quick, guys.
Right.
We're on 3:33 now.
Okay.
So you have to face that way so the pillar you face that way. Like that, so make the thingy like that. Okay, the team leaders in position. Come on, we're getting late. The team leaders all in position. All right.
Lizzie, come back this way a bit. To line up vertically here. Okay.
Right, all the team leaders in position.
Prentice?
We're ready? Okay, will all of the members of the tribes step in then, and the sentinels surround all around the edges, just like we did at the site the other day. Okay, come on quickly.
Yep.
We all ready to go? Okay. All right. Inhale a slow, deep 48-petal lotus breath into the azare and draw the 48-petal lotus down to the Ra center from the azare as the inhale breath completes. Hold the inhale at the Ra center for a moment with the lungs at full expansion. Exhale firmly on a single point downward axis using the breath to push the 48-petal lotus from the Ra center down to the Nadraki feet point. Hold at full exhale for a moment with the lotus at the Nadraki and call to mind the 7 Ka-Ra Biveka crystals stored in the Nadraki. Hold. Now inhale gently into the Nadraki, using the inhale to draw the cluster of 7 Ka-Ra crystals into the center point of the 48-petal lotus at the Nadraki, and then exhale gently into the Nadraki, keeping the lotus with the Ka-Ra crystal cluster center at the Nadraki. Now run one set of 3 ethoson breaths, as you did during phase 3 technique. Notice as you're pausing on the last exhale of the ethoson 3 cycle that the Ka-Ra 7 crystal cluster in the Nadraki begins to shimmer and glow with a pale silvery aquamarine D13.5 lotus light, and a vibration wave begins to emerge through the Nadraki and into both feet. Inhale and exhale gently from the Nadra and observe, intend that on each exhale the Kara crystal cluster aquamarine light grows brighter and its corresponding vibration in the feet stronger. Inhale at the Nadra using the inhale breath to contract the 7 Kara crystals in the cluster together into one Kara Biveka crystal in the Nadra. Exhale firmly into the center of the consolidated Kara crystal at the Nadra and observe, intend that the 2 fused Kara units of the Biveka Kara crystal suddenly shatter into a starburst of beautiful pale silvery aquamarine D13.5 lotus light within the Nadra feet point. Inhale again at the Nadra using the inhale to draw the aquamarine lotus starburst into a singular point of radiant aquamarine light in the Nadra and observe, intend as the lotus starburst of light now solidifies into a small, beautiful, singular aquamarine lotus crystal within the Nadra. Exhale gently into the center of the D13.5 aquamarine lotus crystal in the Nadra. Inhale at the Nadra using the inhale breath to draw the aquamarine lotus crystal up from the Nadra feet point to the Ra center at chakra 3. Hold the breath at the top of the inhale with the lotus crystal at the Ra center. Exhale gently from the Ra center using the breath to push the aquamarine lotus crystal from chakra 3 Ra center to chakra 2 Ka center. Hold the breath a moment at the bottom of the exhale with the lotus crystal at the Ka center, chakra 2. Inhale a 48-petal lotus into the D13.5 aquamarine lotus crystal in chakra 2 Ka center. Hold the inhale a moment at chakra 2 Ka center. Then firmly but gently exhale on a single point horizontal axis towards the rear, using the exhale to push the lotus crystal from chakra 2 sacral, Ka center, backwards horizontally into the chakra 1 seed seal in the tip of the tailbone. As the aquamarine lotus crystal enters the tip of the tailbone, observe, intend that the lotus crystal begins emanating a progressively brightening pale silvery aquamarine lotus D13.5 light and corresponding felt vibration. Breathe gently from chakra 2 Ka center and observe the lotus crystal in the tailbone tip. Continue gentle Ka center breathing as the lotus crystal in the tailbone flashes into a beautiful pale silvery aquamarine starburst. Observe as this starburst flash of D13.5 lotus light occurs in the tailbone tip. A set of 24 corresponding aquamarine lotus starbursts flash on, one in each of the 24 PCM lotus points, and sense a corresponding vibration emerge in all 24 lotus points, then spreading into the central vertical current and pillar of power. Now shift attention to the Nadra key at the feet point. Inhale deeply from the Nadra key, using the inhale to draw pale silvery aquamarine lotus light simultaneously from all 24 lotus points into the central pillar of power and down into the Nadra key. At the top of the inhale. Hold the breath at the top of the inhale for a moment at the Nadra key. In one forceful exhale at the Nadra key, push a starburst of pale silvery aquamarine lotus light out from the center of the nadra key. Hold the breath at the bottom of the exhale for a moment, then quickly but gently inhale, drawing a cord of lotus light up from the nadra key to the Ra center. And then, when you've done that, exhale gently at the Ra center. Now just breathe normally from the Ra center for a moment, using each exhale breath to push rays of aquamarine lotus light outward around the entire body from the Ra center. Observe that on each inhale, keep going, observe that on each inhale, the lotus light in the Ra center, nadra key, pillar of power, and all lotus points intensifies and brightens. Continue this natural lotus light breathing from the Ra center. Use each exhale to push rays of aquamarine lotus light outward around the entire body from the Ra center. Observe that on each inhale, the lotus light in the Ra center, nadra key, pillar of power, and all lotus points intensifies and brightens. As you do this, intend or observe that the D1.75 Black Heart of Anubis implant pops and transmutes into a speck of gold dust at the bottom of Chakra 2 Car Center. Next, intend or observe as a dense gold metallic pin that extends from the knee point to the center of Chakra 4 emerges and rapidly de-densifies and transmutes in the D13.5 lotus light. Continue normal Ra center lotus light breathing and sense or observe that the D1.5 Greenwich reverse D3 ethos rod in the upper thigh region and the D2 counterpart in the base of the Ra center, Chakra 3, both spin on a horizontal plane clockwise from the rear to the left, resuming the natural 3 east-left, 9 west-right shield position of the ethos rod. Finally, intend or observe as a dense gold metallic buckyball C60 radiation harness emerges with the density 1, within the density 1 nadradon cell, between the Maharic shield, 12 inches between the feet, 12 inches below the feet and the lower calves. And an aquamarine lotus flash emerges at the nadra key feet point. Intend or observe as the C60 nadradon cell radiation matrix harness de-densifies and disappears within the nadradon cell. And a beautiful 180 charge Adare standing flame emerges at the nadra key and expands to fill the entire density 1 nadradon cell between the Maharic shield and your lower calves. Inhale a deep, slow breath into the Nadraki. Hold this breath at the top. Then exhale once, forcefully, using the breath to push 180 Adare standing flame down into the Mahadra at earth core, where it will remain and continue activation of all nadradon cells. Breathe now and forever from the Mahadra Adare flame to enter the perpetual cycle of atoms regeneration through Taliya Nadra breathing. Now we will complete the stand by breathing gently from the Mahadra Adare flame, while first spinning slowly just 3 times counterclockwise with our awareness on the bottom magnetic Merkaba. And in your own time follow it with 3 clockwise rotations of the top electrical Merkaba while toning your individual tribe's name. Sentinels, please use tribe 13. Everyone else use their tribe names. So try and work as a tribe. On 3, we'll start the rotation 3 times, first clockwise, working with the bottom Merkaba, then counterclockwise, yes, with the bottom magnetic Merkaba, then just stop and reverse the direction and then move into the clockwise rotation, working with the top, toning the 12 tribes' names. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Om Shaddai Ure Akuntam. Om Shaddai Ure Akuntam. One more. Om Shaddai Ure Akuntam. Ta Asia inta Doi. Ta Asia inta Doi. Ta Asia inta Doi. Soul song.
you, it may be a homecoming feeling. No. For the first time in 5.5 million years, the Earth has been able to finish her inhale, finish her last breath, and then take her first. We are part of the first wave of release into assisting mutation. It is the beginning of the process of learning to breathe life again. It is the beginning of a harmonization with Earth's healing wave of ascension, where our genetic time codes that are stored in our DNA template now go into co-resonance with the portions of the planetary shield that are bringing themselves from the sextile spot in order to restore the natural clear breathing process of the planet. The same thing is happening in the solar shield, in the galactic shield, in the universal shield. And with this activation, Earth now comes online with the rest of itself and the rest of our universe as the wave, healing wave of ascension begins. The temple sites that we have activated during this journey are all now serving their individual roles in releasing the planetary golden intent of the prisoners. We can thank the Tosi and Anunnaki and the defections in the UIR and their willingness to hand over the grids connected to the black heart of Anubis implant so that we could reverse it and clear it in order to release the peace. Runs through the earth core and connects with to its own crystal body. The pillar of power on the etheric and the atomic level are now coming into activation. This will begin a progressive series of up-step time waves, which will progressively activate the next series of cells. We will speak of those once we sit down for a minute or two. We could go on with theory for about 6 hours. We won't do that to you at this hour of the morning. There is much more to learn and to say, but the most important thing for everyone to understand is there was a very good question asked today by one of our members here, and it was, what were the last 3 workshops, this one included, about? Really? That's a very, very good question. The answer is not short. However, the short answer is, because of the political environment that is taking place, the activations that took place during this workshop were done in simultaneous action with activations of the parallel Earth wormholes that connect to the parallel phi-X matrix. The UIR have set in motion with the Buddhara a linking of the wormhole matrix that runs from the Los Angeles area up through Alaska and Hawaii, the Buddhara matrix. They are linking it into the parallel phi-X matrix, which interfaces on our side, on our Earth, on the other side of Mexico, in the waters over in the Pacific side. Comes through the temple system located in the Yucatan, and then moves over through the Groal and into the Atlantic, on the Atlantic coast. What they are doing is linking the entire set of wormholes in order to not only activate the 55 Merkaba, but to activate the 144 spin Merkaba, which is enough to take down an Eka. The only action in response to this action of the UIR in the Buddhara is the action of, we've talked of axiom base shield bonding to the Eka base shield, which would have given us a 9D flame. A 9D flame will override a 55 reverse flame, but it will not override a 144 reverse flame. The response to the UIR's action has been to initiate the process of axiom base shield bonding to the Akasha base shield, which is located in the Akasha A. It is a 360 activation. They will not be able to override this activation. It is being done out of necessity, because if not, the seed atom of the planet and everything on it would reverse rapidly, first to the 55 and build through its sequence up into the 144. So this was the only response able to continue the Christos realignment mission and to continue to allow evolution of the Christic nature to take forth from this place. So you are a part of a very, very special mission. It is called the Starburst Project. We'll talk more about Starburst when we go into Qatar Level 4 and when we go into the English workshop, where we'll have more time to assimilate the data and the graphs from this particular body of data that was released. We would like to explain to you too that in the waiting was necessary, and I am having you stand for a reason. Then pardon me while me and my higher parts talk together and we sound kind of funny. I'm still here, but then we're all here. You're standing to hold the seers. We're going to hold the seer pillars for a few more minutes. I know you must be very tired, but it is important to hold the seer pillars that you have generated. Right now they are linking through the grids into the sites that you were at before, and they are putting the temples online. We are interfacing in between the wormholes of the parallel Earth that interface here on the other coast of Mexico on the Pacific side, and the ones that are on this Earth on the Atlantic side. There is a thing that they are trying to do with this linking of the Buddhara wormholes into the parallel Earth wormholes. Now, those of you who followed us through the 2003 Hitaro and Hitalan know that parallel Earth fell to Wisadrek in the parallel system to the Wisadrek Mediterranean black hole. You also would know, if you were with us in Andorra during Hitalan, that we assisted in preventing the blending of the 34 same spin set vortices here with the 21 spin sets over in parallel, which they were trying to rip the hole into the Wisadrek matrix from the Wisadek matrix and drag everything down into the Wisadek matrix down on this side. We were successful in preventing that blend, and it stopped temporarily the 55 Merkaba activation. UIR are not happy about this, of course. This is the last way that they can interface with Wisadrak. They are initiating war with the Wisadraks. They are going and attempting to use the wormholes here that still have access points, the parallel wormholes on the other coast, the Pacific side of Mexico. They are attempting to use those to cut through into Wisadrak again, kind of like the back door, and then cycle it back up through these temple systems in the Yucatan so that they can literally, again, suck in the fields from the Wisadrak into the Wisadak. Again, this would create a nightmare for this planet if this were to successfully happen, because we're stuck in the middle, and we would be dragged into reversal, as well as a few other things that involve things flying through the sky that you don't really want to see. The activations that you've taken part of today have not been an act of aggression nor even resistance to the UIR. They have been an act of necessity to anything that calls itself Christic on this planet or anywhere else. And they have also assisted the Wisadraks, because the Wisadraks do not want this fight. They want their own to go home. They made their mistakes. They realized they wish they didn't go Metatronic. They did. It's too late to fix this. But they'd like to stay where they are for as long as they have to be. They would like to be left alone. But this isn't going to occur, because with this war behind the scenes, you are also going to see a drama begin to unfold here on the planet with the representatives of the UIR, which involve everything from Andromeda chromatons to various versions of Jehovian Anunnaki who can't make the Adani host, to defecting Wisadraks, who are Drak groups that now work with the UIR, moving their political forces against the Wisadraks of the other side. You're going to see the makings of holy war in the next several years. This is not something disconnected from this. As long as this plan continues, where they think they can get through, and they still may be able to, they still have 1/3 of the ethos rod, 1/3 that we cannot reclaim without going into major battle, and this planet can't afford another electric wars, as 5.5 million years ago did. It would not survive. Nothing on it would survive, but the planet itself would not survive. So attempting to reclaim that 1/3 rod of the ethos rod is not an option. We can replace its frequencies with heliotalic subsidy. We are fortunate that we have the cooperation of the Toti and Anunnaki groups and many of their Palladian groups that are now assisting, not because they particularly like us or because they tell the truth now any more than they used to, but because they want the Adani host over to the parallel Eka. It is a fallen system, but it's a much more advanced fallen system that still does practice Christic principle, even though it no longer has the ability of eternal life. It still has such a reverence and respect and love for eternal life, and an acknowledgement of their own responsibility in losing that, where they blame no one. They are a matrix that has much hope for the time that it will be in existence, and because they allow for hosting of other falling matrices under very strict conditions, because they will not allow other matrices to come over and take over their system and turn it inside out again and put everybody at war, because they're a peaceful system, the Adonai. The Ethiopians accepted the Adonai host, and because of this, we have been able to combine their 1/3 reverse rod. They've let us turn it back around to the degree it could be, to blend it with our 1/3 rod, ethos rod, that always stayed in its natural position but stuck down below. And that allowed it to have enough frequency to rise where we can begin the breathing process. So we're going to see some interesting things on this planet. Right now, the UIR are not directing most of their aggression or annoyance at us. They're directing them at two groups. One are the Wisadraks, because they do want control of the Wisadrak grids, because the more grids of theirs they can get, the more they can poke holes in the caps on those parallel wormholes. And 1/3 of those we cannot protect, because they're completely keyed to that 1/3 ethos rod that we can't touch. So when you began to see particularly issues come up in a greater way between Muslim and Christian, you will see Jewish and Christian on one side, and you will see Muslim on another side. And this has to do with primary race affiliations, soul group affiliations. There's divisions in all of them where there's crossovers, and there's indigos scattered through all of them as well. But the primary division you will see primarily, the primarily Muslim groups that appear to be being attacked will actually be the Wisadrak groups that are trying to protect themselves. There will be another group, and these will be the militant ones. They are not Wisadrak, they are UIR Muslims, and they will look like they are defending the Muslim cause, but they are not. What they are actually doing is abusing the Muslim sentiment and attempting to rally it and its emotional energy to allow the UIR to take over the Muslim grids. So it's going to be very confusing to figure out who is who in this drama. You're going to see Palestinians and Jews and Muslims of various different kinds in all sorts of issues, and you're going to see America smack in the middle of them, and you're going to see the European Union in some very interesting predicaments among itself as it realigns itself with which agenda is it going to follow. Now, the political events do not need to be your primary concern, because they will go with or without you. They're going to do what they're going to do, and you're not going to stop that. If things go well, we will be able to assist in blocking the wormhole connection enough where they will have to settle for somewhere between a 55 and just probably they would be able to go up to about a 134. A 134 activation of the Merkaba. That's 10 short of the 144. That they will not be able to pull Wisadrak in. If they get to the point where they cannot, they will drop the Holy War issue, because it won't matter anymore if they can get Wisadrak grids. So we're going to, when you watch the events in the next number of years, months, years, realize that this trauma is behind it, and realize that you have been a part of the healing, and that where the things can be done to bring the best peace and the best solution for everyone, because we don't work just for one group, we work for the best of all beings everywhere with genuine love in our hearts. Realize you're part of that, and there are more steps that are going to come that are activating progressively more, because our pillars are just beginning the activation of the 180 flame. The next will be the other 180, and then the blending of them to the 360 on what's called a bipolar charge, which means they are polarized too. And the next final phase will be the 360 but on a tripolar charge, which it's a bit of the difference you could compare to an alternating current where 180 can run and then another 180 can run, but you can't run the two together, 360, and then a direct current where you can blend the two together to run a 360. This is beginning the process of bonding not only the planet here and the systems here in this Veka into its own Eka, but of taking the Eka and its twin and bonding their axiom grids into the Akasha base shield, so neither of them are pulled down into fall. It is really a great time, because these activations are very, very intense. They would not have been necessary if it weren't for this attempted linking of the wormholes. So in every dark cloud, there can be a silver lining if you know how to look for it and where to look for it. We're part of that silver lining. Silver and a few other lovely heliotelic frequencies. So I will not keep you on your feet now much longer, just for a second or two, and it will be fine to leave, and your pillars will hold. Your pillars will communicate with the ocean here. They will stay here for a while. They're going to be sending information directly. They're like little beacons that will stay. You can connect with them to actually find out more, to begin reading the planetary shields, to get a feel on what is needed or what your particular guardian contract might be, those kind of things, by just aiming for the pillars you set in this period, because this is the first time the ethos has been brought in. The ethos is now turned on. Now we can breathe from the nadradon. We can breathe from the nadradon and pull the pillar up and down. And every time it goes up and down, it sparks. And the more sparks are generated in the inner pillar of power, the more your seed atom gets spark pulses, and the spark pulses allow the seed atom to spin faster, which allows the Merkabahs to spin faster, which allows the Shona field reversals to transmute faster. It's all a process. The physical exercise will come into it, but the first thing and the most important, and that's why we had to focus on this now, was getting the flames running and get the pillar going. Because exercise without that will not keep your flame activated fast enough and high enough with the planetary grids to override how fast the UIR are activating the reversed Metatronic grids. Now you have the ability to keep up with the time wave on the planet, where you'll begin the automatic cycling of raising frequency and seed atom spin in harmonization with the planetary grids that are going into the ascension path. This is a great opportunity for many people that otherwise were very, very borderline as far as their shields and their fields because of their very long history of karma and what might have happened to their shields in those periods because of decisions they've made. This gives an opportunity, and it also gives an opportunity for the opening of the Trinity gates, which are a set of interface gates that will link through the Ark of the Covenant gates, and these are base 3 gates, which means anything with a base 3 gene code will be able to move through them into host, so that they can also do the Akasha-based shield bonding, so that they too can develop progressive immunity to the frequencies of the 55 and higher Metatronic waves that will be coming through. So it is really a great time, and we would like to thank you, all of us from above and below and outside and inside and all sorts of places. We'd like to thank you for being with us and for your patience. We'd like to say one more thing about the magnetic tail on the poison apple fields around your planet. Sometimes you might wonder, why? Is it always at bizarre hours of the nights or day or morning or whatever you want to call it when I should be asleep that these activations are taking place? Well, if you think about your planet and you think about the night side of the planet, the part that faces away from the sun where night is happening, if you think about the solar wind and your magnetosphere, the solar wind blows that poison apple, right? And on the side away from the sun, you have your magnetic tail, the magnetos tail, whatever you call it here. We call it something different, but it's the tail. That tail creates a cone as opposed to a bubble. On the day side, you've got a bubble. You've got a very strong, compacted, fortified net field. But on the night side, you have a cone that has some angles you can send in higher frequencies and poke holes in that net and get through those magnetic field distortions. So many of the activations will take place at night because of this until these fields begin to shift and clear. They're not going to clear overnight, or your planet would go rolling and rolling. It would roll very, very quickly all over the place on its axis, and nothing would be left sitting or standing on it, including trees. We have lots of rocks in space from it, perhaps, but that's not going to help anyone here. So you will have to put up with this sometimes, and if you don't like it, you can always buy the video, but it's much more, let us say, intense if you're there for the first wave when it comes through. The videos will go too. They carry some of the frequency, but technology here has its limitations as far as sending frequency. So there is it's almost like a special nighttimers club that say, hey, it's worth it. I want to sit there when it pops in the grids. Yeah, yes. Well, we thank you for being here and being patient. You can all sit down now if you'd like to. You've done very, very well this whole trip. We thank you very, very much. I will ask you a question, and then I can give my smaller self, that I know is me, don't mind us, we're both talking at the same time. Me and my higher self at once at the same mouth. Yeah. Do you want theory now? You do? Okay. We will do some theory then, so you have a better idea. Okay, bye. That was Azara level. That's my Azara level up there in Iani land. She's tuning out now, so I'll come back from my Transylvanian accent. Jeez. I swear I sound like I'm from Transylvania when her frequencies come in. It's really bizarre. Yeah, but it feels so much more like me, you know? Okay, so you want theory. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of funny. A part of me was hoping you'd say, no, we're too tired for theory, simply because, as you probably know, when I do theory, I prefer to show millions of graphs of things. Well, we've got what'll probably be not millions, but probably about 20 graphs squashed onto 2 at the moment. And I mean squashed. I'll show you this. Here, am I going to be in the way of this? How do you do this? There you go. I'm going to be in the way. Yeah, I have to move. You've probably seen some of these scratchy things earlier. I have to sit down for a few minutes till this finishes running. I'm still blocking it. Let's try that. Okay, now, the reason we don't have these graphs, all this information, by the way, just came through today. And it started at 8:30 this morning. Actually, it started at about, I think it was about 1 o'clock last night. And I was up for about two to 2.5 hours, started some of it, and then they said, all right, that's enough. The next flow's coming in the morning. So I went to sleep, got up about 8, started at 8:30, and I've been going ever since, literally. So there was just tons of data, being brought down. And when the data comes like that, it's not just one line of linear. There's like sometimes 6, sometimes 12 different lines of data coming. Sometimes it's visual without any words, and the words come later. Sometimes it's 6 different levels of words that all have something to do with each other, but you have to figure out which was the first piece, which was the second, etc. It was the fun of this was compounded by the fact that the ship would not allow us to run transparencies on the photocopier. So I had one set of transparencies of things that I knew I was going to use, but I had no idea what the next level of charts or anything were going to be, so I didn't know what I was going to need. And I had no idea they were going to throw this much information in one day of us. Now, this is why the graphs are basically illegible until I dissect them. See, what these are going to become are a series of graphs that will contain bits, all of this information, but in levels, in layers, where you see how it relates to, other things. I wanted to show you this one because, can we bring it down a little, honey? It's basically showing you that the things you'll see a little bit more clearly on the other graphs that don't have the embedded Cathara grids showing are all built on the positions of things in relation to the embedded Cathara grids. All right, so when you see some of these centers and where rods are and centers of things are, you'll see that knowing that those positions were found by positions of things on the embedded Cathara grids in relation to each one of those. We basically have what are called the nadra cells and the nadra seals. These, in relation to a Cathara grid, any Cathara grid, and all of the embedded Cathara grids, come in at the 1.5 to 0.5 levels. These are the nadra cells, and the center point of those would be the K1 signet. Okay, so it's in the K1 signet that, Cathara center 1, that you will find the center seal. Now, you have that on the big density level one. You have it on the D3. This is just density 1, right? Remember, there's 4 densities, each with 3 dimensions. You need a paper the size of a wall to try to show what that, what that looks like. But this would be the density one. This would be the D3 level. This would be the D2 level. And then here's the D1 level. So in all of these, you would have, at that position, between 1.5 and 0.5, with its center point in signet 1, Cathara center 1, you would have a nadra cell. Okay? That would be the cell and the seal. The seal that releases it would be, or allows it, the frequencies to fill into it and then it to open the seal, would all be found at the K1 positions. What makes things even more fun is to know that the ethos grid, which runs upside down to our PCM universe, Lodi grid, right? The ethos grid has its Cathara center 1 up here, right? Because this is actually its bottom So its Cathara center 1's here, and way down here you'd have its Cathara center 12. On all of the Cathara grids, the rod crosses through at the density 2 shield, the center of the Cathara grid, across the Azure. All right. So this is where you get these multiple rods doing different things. You have the natural PCM rod, which would be here. That's not even shown because there was enough mess all over this already. That would be here. Now, on the PCM level, all of the rods link through the Azure. When you come down here, you'd have the ethos rods running this way. It gets really confusing, and you need to play with two transparencies together and literally shift them up and down to see, okay, where is what when you align, say, ethos Cathara center 1 with density level, with density 1 level, with the density 1 level PCM Cathara center 1. Now that puts all the other stuff, including the ethos rod, down here somewhere. The breathing processes we're involved in are the processes of literally taking it from what would be a 0-point full exhale alignment, where you have the Cathara, PCM Cathara grid this way, and from here, at that point of K1 PCM, you'd have the K1 ethos, which means the whole ethos grid would be down here. That would be full expansion, all right, full exhale. And then the inhales start, and they progressively create a series of, and this goes for each dimensional level as well as the density level Cathara grids. But on each level, now see this one, what I'd like to do is I'd show these in stages. You know what I mean? Okay, this is full expansion. The next one is where ethos Cathara K1, ethos Cathara center 1, moves up to the next. It moves up a step. And that would bring it from alignment here with density Cathara center 1 to what's called engaging. Engaging means ethos Cathara center 1 ends up in the PCM density Iyumbi. That begins the engaging of the inhale process. Then the next phase would be the ethos Cathara center 1 moves up to the Azure. Now some interesting thing happens when you begin the process of moving the ethos grid up into the PCM grid. If you have, here we go, this is hard on these diagrams because they're not separated out, so you can't see the stages, and that's one of the things that I will do for the English workshop is to get those all sorted. But you not only have the level, like the Cathara center 1 ethos moving, and that implies that the rod is moving. It also implies that the ethos shields are moving. So if the ethos is upside down, and you have ethos Cathara center 1 here, which would be its point, let's say in its full expansion position, which isn't drawn on here. This is a different position. This is the position it actually got locked in when the grids went down 5.5 million years ago. It was like halfway, half-mast. It was halfway up on the inhale. But if it was in its full extension position, begins its moving up, it means this would be the point. This part here, just like here, would be its density 1 shield. So the density 1 shield holds the Iyumbi point, right? So when this ethos 1 moves up, its Iyumbi point at some point crosses through first the PCM Iyumbi point, and the two Iyumbi flames, ethos flames, spark. That's where you get your first spark. On the next spark point, and this is after engaging. First it engages, and you have ethos K center 1 hitting the Iyumbi in the PCM. Then when the K1 ethos center hits the Azure, that brings the density 1 ethos shield Iyumbi into alignment with the Iyumbi. That's when you get your first spark. The next one up would be your K center 1 ethos would go up to the Rajna level, density 3 shield of the PCM, and that would bring the Iyumbi of the ethos up into alignment with the Azure flame. So you would get another spark there. Then there's the wacky stuff that happens that once those two sparks build together, they form a 90 subharmonic charge, and it actually makes And at this point, of course, your rod is moving too, right? Like with each, if the tip moves, the shield's move and the rod moves with it. So at that point is when you'd have the rod would be at the Iyumbi, and the rod, this rod would be at the Iyumbi. This rod would be there, and then the sparks make a jump, make literally spark the seed atom and create a jump in the grid where the ethos grid and the PCM grid come into full alignment, where the rods completely match up, and that leads to the next very rapid exhale, where the ethos comes back down again. Now there are cycles, and I don't know, was the paperwork done yet? Did they get any of that yet? Do you know? Okay, they got the handout tonight. Okay, now the little bit of typeset stuff that's actually functional, and we didn't have time to proof for typos or anything like that, and it's possible because my writing was like hieroglyphics, and I can't believe how he translates it. I can't even read it the second time around. But we have to, go through that. I have to make sure I didn't make any, mistakes, because when you're writing that fast, it's easy to make mistakes. So I wanted you to have them so you had some visual reference, and so you just had an idea. All right, so it's like, keep it as something like this, right? With room for, if there's any corrections needed once we fine-tune the paperwork, they will be applied. But it's that part, that's typeset, is pretty accurate. What that shows you is not the techniques, all right? We didn't have time to typeset the techniques because these are the last things that we got, and boy, were they long. But, yeah, and they said you don't need to run them for at least 2 weeks. Actually, they said 24 days. You wouldn't, it's not good to run them again because you have to let these activations do their cycling in the system before you attempt to amplify them. There will be a follow-up set of things you can do, some version of some of these. I don't even know how they're going to combine them as an amplification series once you've had the activation. And these will be typeset as far as bringing them into the the package for anybody who wants to get the package from this workshop or whatever. So they will be included, but they're not now. So don't get confused trying to follow the steps that are described as things that happen during each of these activations that are on those papers. They're just there to give you an idea. It's what's interesting is if you look at the papers, I think it's on the second page. I forget which one it came out on because your pages were different than mine. You didn't take up as many pages as I did in the scribbles. But what we just went through, all those techniques we just went through, were completion of 1 6 cycle. If you can find that on your thing, you'll see there's a whole bunch of other things that lead to 2 12 cycles later. These are all the processes of activating each level of the pillar of power, the atomic and the etheric connection. It is not a simple, blink your eyes, wiggle your nose and ears, and poof, it's done, kind of thing. What is nice, and I was so glad when they said that once you do the 6th cycle on like the first level, which is called the nadradon level, then it automatically sets in motion the automatic cycling to get it to the 2 12 cycles, or like the 12th cycle of the nadradon, and then that prepares the system for the next level, which is activation of something called the Zedradon. I can't even pronounce them at this point. Zedradon? Yeah. Zendradon. It has an N. Yeah, Zendradon. When we started out this morning, I knew about the nadradon. I had no idea about the Zendradon, or the Cathradon, or the Ethradon. These are all cells, too, in the etheric body system, their etheric atomic interface. These connect back into those spheres that we talked about briefly, where we had the D13 lotus sphere, the D12.5 to 0.5 logos sphere, the D11.5 to 1.5 photosphere, the D8.5 to 4.5 ovosphere, and the D6.5 hovosphere. And all of that stuff had led down into the nadradon, right, when we began this process. These cells are the things that control the seals between each of those levels of the bodies. So we've now activated the base tone seals, and it was actually an electrical activation. When you do the magnetic cells, it activates the magnetic currents, but it's considered an electrical activation. And why, I don't even know. It's in there somewhere. It's in the writing somewhere. I'm still learning this stuff too. But it was confusing there. Wait a minute, shouldn't it be a magnetic activation? No, when you do the magnetic cells, they do an electrical activation, and it leads to peaking spin of the electrical Merkaba. It leads to a tharo, not a he-tharo, but a tharo. And then when you do the next level, which are the nadradon cell sets. Now, the nadradon and the zedradon have to do with the nadir and the zenith. If you think in terms of a sphere, if you look those words up in a dictionary, the nadir, N-A-D-I-R, is the lowest point on a sphere. The zenith is the highest point on a sphere. So these are cells at the bottom and the top of each of those spheres, and each of those dimensional levels and density levels of those spheres. Then the chapter-39, the chapter-39 cells, which are the ones that run between 8.5 and 4.5 on any of the Catharas. When you see a Cathara grid, the 0.5s would be, basically if you have a Cathara grid, look at it this way, if you have a Cathara grid, if you have signet 1 down here, signet 2 here, halfway between the two would be 1.5, right? Okay. 2.5 would be halfway between 2 and the Iumbi above it. All right. This is going to get into some interesting stuff about where the chakras are located and the chakra seals, because they actually pop up in very specific places. Where you have the chakra 1, its seal is actually at 1.5 frequency. The chakra seals run the 0.5 scale. So at 1.5, you actually have chakra 1 that would come down this way, the base chakra. And then you have Cathara Center 2. Then you'd have chakra 2 below the Iumbi. I'm using the big one here. Below the Iumbi, you'd have chakra 2 seed seal there at 2.5. Then up here, above the Iumbi, you'd have the 3.5 point where chakra 3 would be. Then you'd have Cathara Center 5. And then above that, you would think you'd have chakra 4, and you do. The next one gets really confusing, where the next thing you would think was, oh, okay, so the next one after you cross over the Azure, you'd have chakra 5 up there, right? No, this is where it gets all twisted, because you have the octave shield that runs at an angle through the head this way, where you have chakra 8 and chakra 9 running diagonally through. And what it comes out to be is you would have you'd have your Azure, then you'd have chakra seed seal for 8 there, and that's why the 8 comes out down here below chakra 5. Then you'd have Cathara Center 8, and then above that you would have chakra 5 seed seal. And these are all run the 0.5. Chakra 5 seed seal is still considered at the 5.5 scale, because that's the frequencies that the seals are holding, regardless of what position they look like. But pretty much they're pretty consistent. So we're going to get into that kind of thing when we get into more into the Cathara level 4 on the personal healing level. But anyway, when we get into moving these pillars up and down and understanding these cells, this begins to show you where which set of cells are. And I have a better diagram that doesn't have all the convolution of the Cathara grids, but the cell locations are found through these embedded Cathara grids. Because what you do is you follow, okay, if the nadradons are between 0.5 and 1.5 with their center seal in Cathara Center 1, that applies to all of those Cathara grids. So you can find where those nadradon cells are. If the next set, the zedradon, or the top cells, the top seal cells, run between the 11.5 and 12.5, you would be able to find those between 11.5 and 12.5 on a Cathara grid, and their center seal would be in Cathara Center 12. So you can find these things, by understanding their relationship, their basic relationship to a Cathara grid, be it a dimensional one or a density one or the universal ones. The chapter-39 cells are the ones between 8.5 and 4.5, and they end up in the center. Okay, if you have 8 here, I'm using the big ones again, the big density grid. if you have Cathara Center 8 there and Cathara Center 5 there, 8.5 would be up half a point to there, and 4.5, here would be 5, 4.5 would be half a point down. So that would show you where that would be the density level catharodon cell. And again, they go on the dimensional levels all the way down as well. So there are these cells, and there's a specific set or sequence of activation, where first you have the nadradons activate, then you have the zendradons activate, the top ones, first the bottom, then the top, and that begins to open the frequencies of the 12.5 to 0.5 logosphere and the D11.5 to 1.5 photosphere. So it begins running those frequencies as those capsules open and the radius lines turn on. If we can remember back a little bit, and again, all these diagrams are going to be presented in more functional order. You do have, I think, a copy of this one where it shows the different levels of lotus points, where you have the 96 of them, all those sets of 24. You have the lotus points, the inner column ones, 24 there. Then you have a set of 24 that are low T points. And then you have a set going further out in the field of 24 low tum points. And then a set further out at the border of the echolota, you have the 24 low ta points. So all these points link together with lines of frequency that connect between them. When we activate, begin the activations of the nadradons and the zendradons, we begin activation of specific levels of the radius lines that connect those lotus points. So we begin to bring the frequencies associated with those levels of the field into the central atomic etheric column, where they can begin to circulate through from the etheric into the atomic structure. So it's a progressive turning on of the radius lines and lotus points all the way out in the field. And that's done by progressively opening these seals of what they call collectively the radon cells. So these collectively are the radon cells. We have the nadradon or nadradon, we have the zendradon, we have the cathradon, we have the ethradon, which correspond to the 6.5 right at the center around the azure levels of the seals. So these are all parts of our etheric atomic anatomy that are key to whether our atomic anatomy can reconnect to the frequencies of the pillar of power and of the outer crystal body fields, our eternal life frequencies. So it's really a very beautiful system, but it's also very complex. When we get into K4, we're going to learn some interesting things about these centers and the cells. Like, I think I'll put the other one on for a minute, please. And remember, all of this is all these centers are still built on that embedded grid thing. Yeah, this one's about 10 diagrams in one, I think. Well, it started out as one thing, and then they had to show me where the yucky stuff was messing it up, right? So you have both, laid on top of each other. Now, the part I wanted to show you first. Okay, could you shift it up a little bit, honey, please, just so I can see the bottom a little better. I can hardly wait to do these diagrams. And then typeset them. Oh, God. Yeah, that's good, honey. Thank you. All right. Now. Okay. Well, let's see. Okay. First of all, if we remember that big density 1 Cathara grid, right? This is the density nadradon cell that runs between the density level of 1.5 and 0.5 with its center that would be Cathara center 1 on the density level, which is at the feet, right? That's the nadradon cell that we've been playing with during these exercises, that we've been healing and purging the buckyball imprint from. This cell controls the density level, corresponding density level lotus point. So if this has a buckyball around it, or a harness matrix on it, that will manifest in each of the 24 lotus points. Now, it doesn't mean it'll manifest necessarily in the low T and low tum and low tut points, but what it will do is manifest in a way that the lotus points can't plug in to the radius lines that go with the outer Lodi sets, which means it shuts off the ability of the atomic etheric pillar to carry the frequencies of the eternal life frequencies of the crystal body. What we're doing is progressively clearing the control cells of the radiation matrix distortion, and that will progressively clear the lotus points, which will allow the radius lines that connect them to their next level out points to turn on, which will allow the next level out points to activate. And there's like a chain reaction where when you activate one level, going out the next level gets stimulated into activation. So it begins the process of progressively turning back on the frequencies that are supposed to naturally be running from the Akabe shield into and out of the crystal body and the lodum in your body. What's interesting, too, about each of these cells is they each create a sheath of frequency within the central column of the pillar of power. So if you look at just the horizontal, the vertical part of this down here, and this again is just showing you one density level. You have the density 1 pillar, which would be from here to here, and that width is determined by the width of that Cathara grid, that density 1 Cathara grid. Now the density, the D3 Cathara grid inside of it was this wide. That's how wide the D3 pillar is in relationship to the Cathara grid. The D2 pillar was this wide, the D1 pillar this wide, and the center is the D13 pillar. The central, it's actually D13, 14, and 15 currents running, the Kirashe and the Kundare running down the center at the very heart of your central vertical column. So when you look at just the density and then D1, D2, density, D3, D2, and D1 aspects of your pillar. Remember, this would be your density 1 Maharic pillar. All right. Now, if you look at that and down and through here, these levels where I have all sorts of funny little dotted lines, red lines, broken lines, all these things, these are very specific. This is going to be fun to actually do it in a way where you can see what it's saying. It's going to be pretty, I think, once the fields are done. Because first of all, you have this column of frequency that runs, that in between the levels of like the D1 level and the D2 level, there are these sheaths of etheric frequency that separate one level from the other. And it's a very specific sequence of sheaths of frequency, because you can look over here, the nadradon cells at 0.5 to 1.5, okay, would create on each dimensional level and each density level, they would create this solid red line, okay? So that would be 0.5 to 1.5. Then out from that, you'd have the, what are they called? The E ones, the ethradon. The ethradon cells that run at the 6.5 level would be the next ones that you would see in that D1 column, the D1 6.5 subfrequency bands. So they would be these little black dots here. Then not too far away from those, there'd be a sheath that would be the D8.5, 4.5 sheath. And then beyond that, and that was from the Kethradon, so it would be the Kethradon sheath. And then you would have beyond that the D11.5, Zendradon sheath, and then the D12.5, I'm falling asleep, Nadradon sheath. No, not Nadradon sheath. Yeah, is that Nadradon? Wait a minute. See, I'm just learning this stuff too. Anyway, this is the structure. We got Nadradon, Ethradon, Kethradon, Zendradon. Oh yeah, and the outside one is the D13.5, which is called the, what is it, L-O-T-R-A, Lotradon. And that's the D13 capsule. Okay, 13.5, 13.5 are where the seals are located. So you'd have all these levels of etheric sheathing just in between the subfrequency bands in one dimensional pillar. These are very interesting because it's these particular etheric sheathings that when you activate the corresponding cells, they come down, and they allow the frequencies from that level of the sheath, the pillar, to blend with the ones on either side of it. So progressively activating the cells progressively not only opens the larger bodies around the body through activating their top and bottom seals, but it also activates and allows to blend the frequencies of the D1, 2, 3, and then density pillar and on out all the way through, because you'd have 15 levels of this pillar going all the way out with the embedded cathargrids. The thing I found most fascinating, because there was a question I've had for ages, it's like, where do those things that certain people like Barbara Brennan see? What are they? Where do they fit? Because I know they do, and I know she's good at what she sees. I know she's very, very accurate at what she sees. As far as who she has interpret things for her in the great beyond, well, I won't go there. But I have a lot of respect for her work, and because I've seen those things too. And it's like, all right, what part of the anatomy are these? I know they're connected to the Hoover bodies, and they appear to be, some kind of blueprints. But we've learned about radial body, we've learned about general Hoover bodies. What are they? This is what they are. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all goes down. But you have the cells that create the sheaths within the pillars. And then if we remember the Yan-Yun flow, right, through the lotus points, it creates that natural, what's supposed to be that natural electromagnetic field around each level, on each dimension level, on each density level. From the vertical pillar level, that Yan-Yun flow expands out for that particular dimensional or density level, a capsule of the frequencies that it is running, an etheric capsule. Now these etheric capsules are what Barbara Brennan is seeing, and inside the etheric capsules there are corresponding sets of lines that are the equivalents of axiotonal and meridian lines, but corresponding to that level. Now we're going to get to a point where we see the distortions in them, and because there are certain ones that aren't supposed to look like what they do look like right now, and that's because of the distortions in the field. But I found it very fascinating to this part of the new information, because it's showing where these cells that we're just learning about create these sheaths within the pillar that we knew we had the dimensional pillars and the density pillars before. We'd learned about the staff, basic staff currents and all of that. But to now understand that they have these etheric sheaths in between them, and that through the Yan-Yun flow, those sheaths project out part of their frequency. They'll keep their center column, but they will project out a capsule around them and series of line grids within them that actually carry the shape of the form on each dimensional level. And this is going to be an interesting part of the work. So I wanted you to see where this stuff with the cells is going. It's not just going into understanding the seals between the things like the photosphere and the ovosphere and all of that, but it's also beginning to understand what are these etheric blueprints, where do they come from, and where are the distortions within them, because if you know where they are, you can know where to fix them. Before you should do chakra work, you need to understand what chakras are connected to really, where they come from, where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be running, before you repair them to run what they have been running, because it might not be what they're supposed to be running in the first place. All the chakras are connected. Each level of the auric field has a set of chakras, of the embodied chakras, and they carry the frequencies. They blend the frequencies that are being transmitted through these etheric capsules into the chakras. Actually blend the etheric currents that are coming from the parallel eka with the particum currents here. They're like mini cells that do those cells do the same thing. The radon cells do the same thing. So the chakra seals, seed seals, serve a similar purpose. So it's all about blending frequencies in very specific ways and proportions that allows the hologram to be created. Nobody said it was simple. Nobody said, God had an IQ of 4 that required it to be really, really simple and, have 3 parts, and that's a trinity, and poof, that makes it happen. To the mind of Source, this is simple. Simple and beautiful, and it works. To the minds of us down here, it may be a little challenging, but it isn't once you look at it for a while, especially once we get the charts pulled out from being all squashed on top of each other, where you might be able to read them, which we will work on as soon as we get home. New batch of charts, to get all these straightened out. But at least this shows you this connection between the cells. These are just the nadradon cells here. Can you pull it down a little, honey? Thank you. So we have the density nadradon. You'd have the D3 nadradon somewhere up in here, and if I could see it, you'd have the D2 nadradon and the D1 nadradon. And I can't see them clear because they just got lost in the shuffle of stuff, of lines. What didn't help also was we'd bought the transparency markers of several different colors, which would have been perfect, and all but the red one and the black one got left on the kitchen table. So if I could have shown you these with different colors, at least it would have given you a better idea. But if you can think of, the embedded cathara grids at the D1.5 to 0.5 with its center point at cathara center 1, that's where you'd have all of your nadradon cells. Then up here, let's see if I can see where I am. I think these are the catharodons. The catharodon cells that run between 8.5 and 4.5 end up here, like the density 1, then D3, D2, and D1. And if you plot it on the cathara grids, like a clear graph of the cathara grids, the embedded ones, you can see where they end up. The other guys, where did they end up? The zendrodons. Yeah, these are catharas. Okay. 11.5. Do I have those on here? I want to make sure I do. I think, yeah, they're dotted lines. The 11.5 to 1.5s, this dotted line that's hard to see, that would be, I believe, wait a minute. No, these are the bigger ones. There's a set of small dotted lines and a set of big ones that are the D13 ones, D13.5 ones. These are the D13.5 ones. See, there's too many in the same color to be able to really see them, but at least you can get the idea that there are these areas in the body that literally have these cells. Some of them are very tiny inside the body, but some of them are actually light cells around various areas of the body. And when we're working with raising that ethos up and turning the ethos on and sparking the pillars and sparking the flames and activating the cells, first the set of nadradons, next will be the set of, I can never pronounce it, zendrodons, and then the catharodons. It's progressively opening and activating these areas of the body and allowing those frequency capsules to blend into each other. So this is all connected. These are all connected through that Yan-Yun flow that we saw the other day that runs through the inner 24 lotus points, which are all connected to the Lodi points outside. It's a very complex structure that we're dealing with here. But if you're going to learn about etheric body, you might as well learn it right. And that means what it's connected to, how it got there in the first place, the fact that you have one, and what can you do with it now that you know that, right? What you can do is activate your pillar of power, and that's what you started to do. And this is a precious, precious gift we've been given. I used to come in and say, I'm sorry again, we're late. At this point, I'm sorry for all of us if it's inconvenient that the planet does what it needs to do at the time it needs to do it. But I am so grateful to have this information, to be able to run these frequencies in my body and to help those I love to run them in their bodies so they can literally begin to re-enter the new evolution back into being Christic, eternal life beings. If I had to wait standing on one foot holding my breath until I turned purple every 5 minutes or so, I would probably do it anyway. And I think that the people that can benefit most from these workshops are the people who feel a little bit of the same way about that. Well, it's not fun to wait. No, yeah, I'm tired. I would have liked to have been asleep 8 hours ago. Me too. But look what we're getting back. Who are we to say, hey, Earth, get on with it, will you? I want to go to sleep. I'm tired. Or it's time for dinner. I want to go have a ciggy. Good luck. So I try to keep it in context. I still don't want anybody to be inconvenienced because of me or any of my workshops or any of us, except this isn't about me. I show up to translate stuff so we can all share it and participate in something the Earth is going through with or without us. The fact that we can is a gift. So anyway, all this stuff leads to things that are wrong right now because of the mutation, because the fact that these cells, and it's not just these cells, when we get into the set of work, or the workshop that's going to cover the Zendradon activations, which I believe we're introducing in the England workshop, we'll find that it's not just the nadradon cells that have been encoded with the buckyball distortion. It's also being carried in the Zendradon cells and the catradon cells. And we can progressively clear it in the same type of way, not exactly the same process, but the same type of way that we've now cleared it in the nadradon cells. But you need to start with the nadradon. There's a specific sequence that these activations have to take place. So the next workshop in England is going to be about the catradons, and it'll probably it'll start with this stuff because most people, except you guys, haven't ever heard of any of this yet. We'll start with that and go into the into the Zendradons. Yes, they're next. Zendradons are next. Go into the Zendradons, and it'll begin the Zendradon activations and probably do the amplification of the nadradons. Then the workshop that's after that, and these are corresponding also with when these things activate in the planetary grids. We can't do the Zendradon activations until that starts to happen in the planetary grids, which won't happen until the cycle of the nadradons gets to a certain level of frequency. We started it, set it in motion now. It's set in motion in the planet now. So once that starts, by October we can begin to do the Zendradons. And by, I think it's between January and February, we'll be able to do the catradons. And that's going to be featured in the trip we're doing to India. And they're having us go to specific places because it has to do directly with the grids. That, there's certain things that need to be done in relation to that activation in those areas. So this is a process. It's not an easy turn it on, great, I got my light body in 3 days and now I'm a saint kind of thing. I mean, there are a few workshops out there that if you want to go Metatronic, they're offering that kind of thing, but it's nonsense. Light body is not a 3-step process. It is not a 4-step process. It is an understanding, a master's level understanding of what your parts are, how they work together, and the condition of the state of things as they are right now. And the state of things as they are right now is a bit tough down here, but it's not beyond hope or beyond healing. We're part of the healing. And part of that is sometimes staying up late and learning about stuff that it would be easy if it was just can I just take the red pill or the blue pill and hopefully one of them will work, like in the Matrix movie. But that's not what mastery is about. It's really funny because there's a lot of people say, oh, well, Dali Sai Baba, whatever, whoever his name is. And I'm not just saying Sai Baba because I have respect for him in certain ways. In fact, I knew him once upon a time in a different life. Not well, but well enough. Anyway, all these people that other people like to brag about them being great masters and ascended masters. I mean, you simply ask them a question like, so you know what radial body mechanics are all about, right? What speed is my Merkaba supposed to be at, the Akasha level? And if they just blink at you, like they have no clue of the vocabulary you're even using, that is not mastery. This information, these words, the languages these words are a part of every one of us at those levels of mastery. At your Eka level, we all have an Eka level that understands this stuff. So people that like to parade around saying they're ascended masters and don't know this information and give you a line, oh, that's just mental body stuff, I'm beyond that. It's like, why don't you go find your mind? Because if you haven't plugged your mind in, you don't have your spirit down here because it's standing between your body and your mind is between your body and your soul and your spirit and all of that. So these are part of mastery. It doesn't mean you have to memorize everything, but just to even have, once upon a time you knew all this and you knew it well, but even if you never do that again until you're way up there and don't have to worry about it anymore, at least having a little bit of a reminder of where the pieces are, how they fit, and how to use them to get yourself healthy again and to get your potential back again. That's all you need to know. And that's why we work real hard to try to bring you graphs that you can't read. No, sorry. See, if I had an ego issue, I wouldn't show you this stuff. I'd wait till it was perfect. But by then, it'd be a moot point probably. It's like, this is the newest information. It's just through. You see it in its raw form, but at least you got it. You know, you didn't have to wait like 6 months until I fine-tuned it enough so my ego could say, oh, I always put out perfect, pretty diagrams with pretty pictures. I'd love to do that, but the information is more important. These funny-looking little things here, these upside-down pentagrams, these are one of the results of having the nadradon cells encoded with the C60 buckyball radiation matrix. They create a series of very unnatural pentagrams, upside-down pentagrams, between lotus points and things. They lock up the entire lotus point system. Like this one has one point here at T3, one at T4, this one at T5, this one at T6. Remember, like T is for top, right? We have the transcendent ones. Yeah, transcendent. The top ones are the transcendent. Then you have the upper 6, and then you have the middle 6 and the lower 6 of the 24 lotus points, right? So these pentagonal bending of natural frequency are completely unnatural radiation matrices, or projection lines, that currents, the atomic etheric currents, are being forced to flow at because of what's programmed into the nadradon cells, and also the zendradon, I keep forgetting the end, I think zendradon cells. Okay, so both the nadradon and the zendradon are holding these patterns into configuration. You have one here, you have another one that runs over here, you have another one that runs between these guys, you have another one that runs between these guys, you have a big messy one that runs down here through the legs, and then you have this really big one that runs here. They're all connecting lotus points and nadradon cell points and chakras into a phase lock, and that phase lock has made it impossible to pull the ethos pillar up and down. It's because of that that the pillar got split into 3, with one part of it wedged. It literally got stuck on the inhale where the ethos cathara center 1 was in the PCM Azare, and it got blasted at that point. And these were blasts. These were sonic blasts that created this type of distortion in the planetary grids. But it made it so it was like at half mast, or the ethos was coming up on the inhale, but it was at half mast. It's been a long day. And part of the pillar was literally phase locked and broken down beneath the feet, down here. And the other part of it was forced up into those, the 1.5 twisted Greenwich rod thing that would come through in here. And remember, each one of these, even the Greenwich rod and the pins and things, they manifest not only on the density level, etheric grids, but also on the dimensional level ones. So you have sets of them, but the larger ones tend to be the control ones. What we've been doing are pulling the pins, that pin that runs from the heart center, chakra 4, all the way down to the knees. That was the control pin, or set of frequencies, reverse frequencies, that were holding all of this together. Those frequencies emerged from something we talked about quite a while ago when we were introducing the Metatronic stuff, where we talked about the 4 black hearts of Metatron implants. And the heart of Anubis, as it was called, was down here at 1.75. It was because of that this golden pin was enabled to be created by taking certain currents from the twisted rod and literally spiraling them up to form an anchoring pin that would anchor the big upside down pentagram here, and that would hold in, this one holds in the phase lock on all the other smaller ones. It's the pin from chakra 4 down to here, which is the D3 nadradon, right at the knees, right, that we dissolved today, because it would have been a mess if we had to blow through that implant. It would have, most physical bodies wouldn't have survived it. It would have created quite a mess as far as, I think, rapid. He said rapid is a subtle word. You're talking about rapid planetary problems as far as geographical Earth changes and things. If they were to just blow the black heart seal out of 1.75, it would have created massive destruction. Just that alone would have. But because the Tothians allowed us to access their grids, that's what the silly hats with the funny symbol were all about, because that's one of their particular shield codes, which is the right eye of Horus, that's on the on the hats that we used. We used it, but we encoded it to protect ourselves through our own, codes, and that allowed us to run the frequencies and the ruche, the full ruche stand pattern, directly into the Tothian grids that control all of this. They allowed us to release, without any resistance, the heart of Anubis, and because of that, we could turn the rod back around and bring the ethos pillar up. So we do have the Tothians to thank for, finally, their cooperation in this whole matter. It wouldn't have got this bad if they cooperated in the first place like they promised, but bad is a relative term. I prefer to look at the whole thing as being pretty good. We're still doing well. The Christos mission is still doing well. And it's getting closer to 2012. And the planet's still here. No large asteroids or planetoids have flown by and flattened us. No World War III has happened yet. This is all very good. It's going better than it could have been, but not as good as we wished it would. Anyway, these are some of the structures we're just starting to learn about, with the etheric capsules, the sheaths, the etheric sheaths in between the levels of the pillars, the connection through all the lotus points, these things that we are beginning the process now of clearing. These will begin their clearing process. The base tones will begin the clearing process as the nadradon now clears. We cleared this nadradon. This will begin triggering the other nadradons to clear their buckyball imprint, which will mean that the lotus points, the base tones of the lotus points on the density and dimensional levels will also clear their buckyball radiation imprint, which means they will not be receivers for what's blasting through the planetary grids from the Metatronic Broadcasting Station. See, this is a Gridmaster's workshop. In a Gridmaster's workshop, I can use the word Metatronic instead of tandem, because this is for people who are not just usually hosters that are coming in from over the other side and are going to get all upset with me if they hear me say Metatron is not, the second seat down from God or anything like that. So you'll hear me talk freely about Metatron and those kind of things in Gridmaster's workshops, where I will do my best to tone it down when it comes to general Cathara, when this information is presented in just the Cathara healing context. We've decided, the beloveds and us beloveds here, that the best way to approach these workshops would be this workshop, and the one coming up in England will be billed as a Gridmasters package. And then this information will be stepped down to Cathara 4. I mean, Cathara, it's still going to, the things that are going to be introduced in England, they are Cathara 4. But they're going to be kind of like Cathara 4 No Holds Barred, where you're going to know about this. You're going to know about the planetary stuff and take it from there. Then there'll be a simpler version that will be synthesized down. We estimated that probably 2005, sometime early 2005, we would try to have Cathara 4 as a manual and all that thing done, because we watch how this, we're just getting K23 finished as a manual. We're getting that functional. And anybody that was in California, yes, you have pages coming. We just got them done, and we're sequencing them back home right before we had to leave for here. So anyway, this, I hope, helps to, despite all the scribbles everywhere, I hope it helps to explain some of what you've been doing with these exercises. The most important thing is that you've been bringing the pillar of power up, and that's the etheric atomic interface system, which means you're beginning to bring the power of the frequencies of the etheric blueprint and its straightened out levels of etheric blueprint that are found in the Eka base shield down in through the crystal body, down in through your lotus points, down in to the literal things, that the literal areas in the body where your atomic currents are manufactured. Atoms are sparks, really. They're made of sparks. They're made of quarks. And quarks and related types of elementary particles are what spark currents look like here, or what science here has named our spark currents. So it's the same thing. Now we are finally beginning to be able to access ourselves, and this is really exciting. This one simply shows, you saw this one before, and Az probably described it well enough to you. We're just showing you that when you take those inhale breaths, right, when you're bringing the D3 ethos pillar up, All right, that would be your first breath, your first 1/3 breath. This would be your second 1/3 breath, and this would be your third 1/3 breath. And from that point, I didn't mark this one yet. That's where the jump occurs, where the ethos catharogrid and the PCM catharogrid come into full alignment. That means the 24 lotus points here fully align with their 24 ethos lotus points, and the magnetic fields, the electrical magnetic fields, those Yanyon flows, completely merge with each other. There's a whole series of things that happen. We didn't get into the 45-degree shifts of the whole radial body axis, and then there's another one where a 90-degree shift happens. We will learn more about these things as we go into understanding the other levels of the cells, where we go from the nadradon into the zedradon and then the catradon. There are levels of activation of the ethos and the eros. We'll begin working with the eros in England with the zendradon activations, and we'll begin to see these will all lead up to what is eventually called starburst. And a starburst is a process that happens after numerous cycles of 212 cycle breaths that have to do with each of the nadradon, the catradon, the zendradon, the catradon, and the ethradon cell levels. Once those are accomplished, there's something called a starburst, which is when the 360 comes in, when a full 360 pillar comes in. It comes in on the planetary level. We're actually going to be resetting the grids that can hold it. 2/3 of the grids will now hold it. It'll be a 360 flame coming in, but it'll be one pillar at a time. It'll blow the planet apart if the whole thing anchored at once. So there's a schedule that we just got, and I think I'll go into this a little bit. Yeah, because there'll be a lot more on the anatomy of person and planet as we move along. You know, the next installment of all of that will be the English workshop, and at least these diagrams will be readable by then, and hopefully there'll be some body text, you know, like type. Oh, by the way, the pages that you do have, I gave them to you even though they're nowhere near being ready or done, primarily for the pictures. So you at least have a visual reference to some of the things you saw. If there's bigger print, that's probably more accurate. Like if there's stuff scribbled in bigger writing, that's probably more accurate. But there may be some little tiny bits of writing that have been, like, you know, you get partial translation and you're not sure what that is, and so they're not final word copy at all on a lot of them. So you may see things mislabeled because they were actually earlier diagrams when, like, where was that lotus sphere, or was that a logosphere or a lotosphere or a photosphere at that level? Oh, you know, that kind of thing. I didn't have time to white them out or correct any of that. So take the words with a grain of salt, but remember what the pictures basically are. The titles should be pretty accurate as far as, you know, this is a yin-yun flow, right? You know, this is your harmonic grid, that kind of thing. So they're there just so you had some idea, because I threw so much at you during this workshop that was all new stuff. So you'd have some idea of what was that I saw, and, you know, how might it have fit together, at least visually. So at least you have those there. Now, these we didn't have time. They gave me, this is one of the last things I got, besides the last technique, which was the last thing I got. This is going to be typed up as a schedule. It has to do with the starburst activations for each pillar and when they're going to happen. We'll have this typeset for you. I don't even have a Mylar of it or a transparency of it, but I can give you a quick rundown idea of how it works. Now, there's a process that builds up to the process called starburst. The first is the nadradon activation, the electrical activation. That is what we started here. The second is the zendradon activation cycle, which is the magnetic one. The third is the catradon activation cycle. And then finally, there's the ethradon activation cycle. And that's with the ethradon cell, the 6.5 capsules cells. That is when the phenomena of starburst occurs. I won't even attempt to describe to myself right now what exactly starburst does, other than the fact that it brings in the full tripolar, which means positive, negative, and zero charge, stronger 360 flame, and it anchors. I do believe that the core of what the starburst does is it anchors that particular pillar into not just the 12 pillars of the Eka, but the 24 pillars of the two sets of them together, and anchors it into the Akasha base shield, which is located in the Akasha A template. So it's like, twice the level that we were working at before. So basically, you have the nadradon, the zendradon, and the catradon activation levels, and we just did the nadradon one and set it on autopilot. So it will continue finishing off. That was just 1 6 cycle. I believe there are 6 of those. So there's yeah. Good thing you didn't have to run that one 6 times. We'd be here for 3 days, because that one was a long one. So we set that into autopilot. The next one, where it's available in the planetary grids when we do the Zendradon, will be in October, when that's around when we're doing the English workshop. When are we doing the English workshop, by the way? I never remember dates of the Zendradon activations, which are the zenith cells, right? Then the Kethradon activations will be available between, they'll start like December 21st and run through February December 21st, 2004 through February 2005. So that's like the cycle that leads up to Starburst, and then the Starburst will take place, which is the Ethradon activation, will take place on the Hitharos, anniversaries, which are the May 27th, that time frame. And they can go like 6 days before to 6 days after will be the peak of those cycles. Now, these periods of the August, the late September, early October, and then the late December going through February of the Nadradon, Zendradon, and Catradon will go every year. And so will, on the anniversary of the Hitharo every year, the starburst happen. Now, the starbursts will be, again, the 360 flame pillar basically anchors through the corresponding Ruche pillar. Now we're in the Ruche reset cycle, the Ruche reset cycle. And pillar 1, for instance, which activated it did its activation December 21st, 2003. That's when it came into activation. All right, so it activated then, and now in August of 2004 is when it began its nadradon activation. So the Ruche Pillar 1 will have its starburst on May 27th, 05. Now that, I believe, is when we're in Morocco. We're in Morocco, and this ties in with the Arc gates. I mean, the Trinity gates, the new base 3 gates that are being opened as well. So there's more than just the starburst activations. It's all connected to the specific areas we need to be, because it's connecting to what of the Trinity gates are being activated or opened at that time. So that's, like, we know with some of these workshops, we know England is going to deal with the Zendradon activation. We know that India is going to deal with the Kethradon activations. And we know that Morocco is going to deal with the first starburst of Ruche Pillar 1. Now, every year, we've got a Ruche Pillar activating. Like December 2004, we have Ruche Pillar 2 doing its activation consummation cycle. That means August 2005, October 2005, and then December 2005 to February 2006, Pillar 2 will have its Nadradon, Zendradon, Kethradon cycle, and then its starburst will be May 2006. So this is how this chart runs, and it'll be easier for us to just type it up and make it available for you. But we do know we have to look forward to the Hitharo anniversary in 2005 will be the first starburst, planetary starburst on Pillar 1, Ruche Pillar 1. That will be the atomic pillar. The one that probably may get interesting is, if that one doesn't, is Ruche Pillar 2, because that deals with the D2 elemental field, the emotional body of the planet, which is the D2 light field that we see as manifest matter out here. So I would think that if there's going to be some visible effects of the starbursts, it might be during the Pillar 2 and Pillar 3 atmospheric activations. That will be Pillar 2 starburst May 2006 and Pillar 3 starburst May 2007. So these are periods to watch between now, atomic level, and 2007, where you're dealing with the D1 atomic, the D2 elemental, and the D3 atmospheric levels of the planetary body. The astral ones might get interesting too, which would be in 2008. So it's just to let you know that along with and as a part of the Ruchete reset cycle, because we've had to go into the 360 activation because of what the UIR and the Budharas are doing. There's this added to it. There will be more frequencies running than originally intended. It doesn't change the original schedule or plan. It just adds more things that are happening during that time frame to it in synchronization with them. So there will be, you'll get a list of, once we get this together, we will have available, hopefully by the end of the English workshop, we'll have all of the stuff together. At least you'll have the list of the Trinity gates and the list of the starburst periods, and we'll know more about the precise stuff on starbursts, at least some more of it, in its relationship to the Nadradon cycle, and what's happening with the autopilot of the nadradon cycle and that kind of thing. So it's a whole new level of work that's being introduced here, and it was exhausting to bring this through. I mean, it must be exhausting to sit there trying to absorb this. What is she talking about? It probably makes sense somewhere, right? That's what I was doing all day, going, oh my God, not another piece. Where does this go? But I know it fits, and this work has been always so consistent with itself, where they'll come back 3 years later to something they introduced 3 years before, and then kind of just left it there, and then went on to other things and never came back. And they'll introduce it, and it's still cogent. It still picks up where that left off, because it is a paradigm unto itself. It is the natural mechanics, and there is a way that things actually are. It's like, well, truth isn't truth unless somebody believes it. That's not quite true. There is a way something is, and there is a truth, whether or not anybody believes that exists. There is a way. And it's like a lot of the fallen races like to argue, well, you can believe that, but we don't have to believe that. These are truths that exist whether or not we believe in them. These are the mechanics by which creation functions. Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, too bad. It's how you got here. But if you forgot, that's okay. That's allowed too within the mechanics of things. So anyway, when we go into another level of what appears to be slightly overwhelming at times, technical data, please know that they only give us the technicals that we need to understand how to use our systems enough in an intelligent way, where we can make intelligent choices, not just blindly follow and kiss up to some guru or claimed angel, that they'll do it for us, where we can know intelligently as masters in ourselves what we need to do with ourselves to get to the Christic objectives that we'd like to. So there's lots more to come. Yeah, and we are finishing up the K2-3 series, so we can get on to the K4 series that's getting dumped on us right now very rapidly. As far as, anyway, those three graphs have too much in them to even attempt to dissect at this point. Plus, I was going to say, I think it's getting, oh dear, it's 5:30 already. All right, I don't know if anybody else has bits of packing left to do, but I know we do. Yeah, we better call it a day, or night, or morning, or whatever it is. I want to thank all of you for being with us. You have a question? Yeah. Okay. That was a good question. Ma, would you like to answer that question? He's saying there's going to be like the follow-up maintenance technique given in about 2 weeks. But right now you don't need to activate anything more than you did. But what you can do is breathe from the nadradon and what did he call it? The ethoson breath, where you just breathe the pillar up to you breathe the pillar up with the rod up even with your PCM rod, and then exhale it down to the feet. Yeah, and just use that. And he says it's also good exercise for the system to stretch the arcs. So if you feel like while you're doing that, on the inhale, the arcs come up, and the diagonals come into the fold, and then on the exhale they come out. And try getting coordinated where you can do them both at the same time, and then combine the loga with them. Like, the movements, right? Whatever ones you want to try. You can actually play with any of those movements whenever you want to. But try the challenge of first getting the pillar going, or the arcs. So it doesn't matter what you do first either. But get arcs going, pillar going. And you don't have to worry about the 1/3, okay? That's only when you're doing mainline, really amp techniques. when you're just doing the basic maintenance stuff, just bring the rod up from the feet up to the azare, and then exhale it down to the feet again. That's all you have to worry about. That and the arcs, and then try to keep that breathing and awareness while you're doing some of the logo positions. That would be what they're recommending for now, until they give us the next, body of follow-up maintenance techniques. Okay? The tapping is, if you've done it with yourself, you can do the amplifying. Now there's a whole schedule, all right, that's coming in the new material that's being put in the K23 manual and in the portfolio particularly. There's a schedule that basically tells you what type of things, like you need to do how often. There's a cycle, I think it's 8 to 12 week cycle of using some of the K23 techniques to get your frequencies up enough where the le'adore and le'atore flames hold. And then it all comes to the point where you can do quick fire and it'll sustain by yourself. Now the quick fire, the quick fire and the Eyes of Ra one, which is considered a power key, that's where K23 leaves off, is the Eyes of Ra activation. It doesn't go into the rest of this stuff. This will be K4 stuff. So there is a schedule recommendation coming as far as when to use those. You don't need to use them very often. I forget what it is just because I have so much other things being, beamed through my head tonight. But that schedule is already done. It's at home ready to be, sent out with the pages from the California workshop, and it's going to be put in. What we're doing is combining the portfolio set and the K23 set from Phoenix into the manual program. And there are schedules in it, and there's very specific written technique now of axiom-based shield bonding with about 3 pages of introduction to it, and a very specific sequence that I forget what it's called, but it's a way of using the tap sequence with pauses in between, and it gets technical. So there is more information coming on that. For now, I would simply suggest if you want to run the basic Lotus run, you can, because it doesn't hurt to amplify. Because what you're doing with that is the le'atore and the le'adore. You're not going into full adore flame, which is the 180 flame. Okay, this is the next step. So you can use that to fortify the fields and then play with what you've learned here. With the arc breathing and the pillar up and down and the logos moves is what I'd suggest. This gets into when we get the schedule out for K23. Once you complete, there's the activation cycle itself for the le'atore. Then there's the le'adore amplification cycle. After using the recommended techniques from the K23 manual for that period of time, then you can self-sustain just on the power key, and then you can take it from the power key into any of this. All right, but it's like, and it's not a forever cycle. It's like, I think it's 8 to 12 weeks. Is that the whole one? Yeah, I think so. But it is written. It's
quick touch for each 12 of the 12 logos. You did the quick fire and then you did one logo. You did the quick fire and then you did another. Different exercise.
How did you run them? Right. Right, yeah, who haven't, in other words, had the dance floor programs. Oh, okay. Yeah, he got that part. You finished that one. You answered that one. You got that
You
part.
see that we really need to stop, okay? That material is prepared for 2 different audiences, right? This is the diehards mob, okay, that are working with the most advanced frequencies in the most advanced ways. The Logos presentation is designed to work with people who perhaps new to the work, who are perhaps less familiar working with frequency and so on. The middling point that they suggested I used was to have people work with the quickfire at the beginning of each movement for a period of 2 to 4 weeks. Thereafter, anybody, regardless of how new they were to the work or how long they'd been with the work, would not need to do it more than once at the beginning of a session. Now, if, as time unfolds, and it tends to do that quite quickly with us, you find that there is a technique that it feels more appropriate, or perhaps introduces more powerful activation prior to the logos, then of course you would use it.
Anyway, we're going to have to say good morning, good night. We would like to say, yeah, welcome and bye-bye. All of that, all at once. I'd just like to restate thank you all for coming, especially you guys that had such a hard time getting here thanks to the wacky hurricane syndrome that was a byproduct of what the UIR are trying to do with linking all of the wormholes. It wasn't personal, so you don't have to get paranoid about it. It wasn't directed at you personally, but they do chuckle when destiny works out like that for them, where they can cause us some aggravation. I hope your trips home are much happier, more peaceful, and have no hurricanes involved in them, or earthquakes, or any other acts of what they usually say, God, or other. Right? So thanks for being here. Thank you so much on behalf of all of the beloveds and the planet for being a part of this. This is the first Ruche round that's been run, and it'll be the first of many. And it's just very exciting to be able to share all of this with you. And on behalf of us both, and also the Adonai and the Iane and all of their families coming down. Thank you. And God bless.